What is the purpose for male and female archetypes, and what can we learn from them?
Well, the first female and male archetype we get from our family context, or you may say the first representatives of the world for us are our mother and our father, right? So the first understanding of gender and whatever it contains or whatever it represents comes from the background we grow in. And let's say if the family is dysfunctional, or parents have toxic relationships, or if or relationship between each other, or if the family has only one parent, all of these will affect our understanding of the world and of self. Because again, our understanding is not born just out of what we are given. The given is kind of, it's circumstantial, it is there. And our interpretation of that will define our future attitude, or our sort of understanding of, so to speak, gender dynamics or female-male relationship. And first of all, this relationship within ourselves. Because let's say our parents represent our world and our relationship with the world. And so if, say, there is a conflicting dynamics, if there is certain unresolved traumatic experiences within the parents, these things will flow into the child. Now, it doesn't mean the child necessarily will become traumatized, but most probably will be affected to some degree. And their interpretation of the world will go through the prism of the parents' interpretation of the world, or the parents' whatever veils that are passed on. And so our understanding of the world is very individual. And our first, let's say, step to build that understanding comes from our parents or parental figures, or people who we come across, let's say, or we meet first time being in this body, and who kind of provide for us, guide us, and so on. But it's also very important what experience we have while we are in a womb, while we are not yet out into the world. So whatever the story is there, the period of pregnancy is very, very important. So it can affect people tremendously. Let's say if certain dramas happen, if parents are not sure whether they want this child or not, if there are emotional outbursts, feelings of victimization or not being loved, or any other traumatic experience during that period, all these experiences will definitely affect the child who is going to be born afterwards. But it will be very deeply, it will be like something sown in their you can say subconscious, speaking with the language of the modern psychology. So it will be sown in their consciousness, but it's not necessarily that it's going to come out right away. But let's say if in the family there are several siblings and they all come from the same parents, their reactions will be different, because parents, it's like an environment. It's like we're living in the world, and everyone kind of sees certain things, like similar things, but our attitude to this is different. Let's say one child would be maybe empathetic towards animals and the other child would not be. So the role of personal or individual embodied consciousness, or in other words, soul, will matter as well, because the role of in interpretation of the circumstances of the world, of everything that one experiences, will matter too, because these interpretations will be born out of the so to speak, distortions which are there from early times and early incarnations, I would say. So they will be triggered, and they will be probably, they will sprout out of this children's consciousness. And that's why we see many times that there are several siblings in one family, and all of them perceive their parents differently, perceive reality differently. Some are inclined towards this and some are inclined towards that. But nevertheless, these are certain inclinations and certain reactions to what is given. The subconscious understanding of male and female roles will still be imprinted from this birth. But yet, how it's gonna later on be sort of digested and brought into their context of life and then into their context of destiny will probably vary, because it depends on them. It also depends on what's their attitude to each parent, whether they perceive each parent positively, negatively, whether they struggle, whether they take their emotions onto themselves, whether they side with one parent and oppose the other. So all these things will matter in their future, in their relationships, in their personal, even friendly relationships and so on with people in general. Because it's like, if there will be antagonism with the mother, let's say, they will also feel, if they feel, let's say, hurt or suppressed or controlled by their mother, or there's any kind of such interpretation and such an experience with the mother, let's say, it will translate in later times, for instance, into a rebel-like behavior or rebellious attitude towards the world, or feeling like I'm a victim and everyone is trying to control, or one will try to avoid, personal relationships with women, or try to just play with those relationships, being afraid to really commit. There can be commitment issues later on. There can be issues with one's own image and understanding of one's own role in this life, and one might feel very unsettled and anxious. Sometimes these things are not necessarily translated into bad relationships or failures in relationships, but they may definitely undermine people's position while they are in the relationship. And these kind of undermining tendencies can be all of a sudden coming on a very subtle level, where even they have a good relationship with someone, there'll be always this provoking energy from within, or provoking wave or waves of certain emotions which will be struggling with the partner, or pushing one to escape from the partnership, or maybe even oppose the partnership to some degree, or constantly have some kind of struggling or opposing dynamics, conflicting dynamics. So, and you see, this is what I'm speaking about. It's I call it, when I work with people, I call it psychospiritual therapy, because you cannot speak about the mind and consciousness without really understanding spiritual context of it. Nor you can speak about healing of the body and the mind without really understanding the aspect of consciousness and how it actually comes into shaping our individual being. And so we cannot just say that this is, or generalize, because every individual case is individual and they have their own context, they have their own peculiarities. That's why when we try to understand what is the world for us, we first of all need to go into understanding what is or what are the parental archetypes for us, and how we've built this idea of the world based on the parental archetypes. And so this will be our foundation once we understood this and work through this through the methods that I've been suggesting to my followers. Once you worked with those primordial, so to speak, emotions, which have been invoked by early childhood experiences and through interpretations, through stories that come out of the childhood. Sometimes the story can be just in your head, but you perceive life through that story, and so it becomes an essential factor affecting your destiny, so to say, or the path of experiences on this planet, let's say. And so also understanding of the self depends on how we are able to detangle these first experiences and interpretations of archetypes and roles of our parents and our relation within ourselves to our parents and to the world in general. If, let's say, a little boy, let's say, was in awe of his mother's beauty, so only this little experience, let's say, the boy looked at her mom and got completely dissolved in that, like, oh, my mom is very beautiful. So at that point, the mom is his world, right? So from this just situation, because this becomes an imprint on this boy's consciousness, through this interpretation, the boy will or may interpret female role as very powerful, because that was something so powerful that sort of transcended that boy's consciousness at that moment. He dissolved in this, wow, he got in awe with his mom's beauty, let's say. And so what does it mean later on in his life when he's, let's say, over 20? There could be codependency. There could be there could be secret development of this feminine side, where the boy is feeling that to be a woman is sort of very auspicious, or it's very mystical, or it's something that pulls him. And so the appearance will become very important for the boy, or he will maybe focus on the appearance, or will look for females, or will look for kind of be always attracted, and will not realize consciously until he actually realizes that how this came into play. But he will be just mystically drawn to beautiful women, and will lose his, conscious understanding while he's looking at a beautiful woman. So this can be a weakness, for example. But this is because, and also such a female can look very masculine, such a male can look very masculine, but can sort of perceive the world through female perspective, because he acknowledged at time that somehow females have some sort of a hidden power. And so there will be internal desire to try certain female ways of living life and stuff like that. So this tendency doesn't need to be expressed necessarily outwardly. It can be just internal. For example, one may start too much taking care of oneself and one's body, and kind of develop certain feminine tendencies, like desire for or too much focus and emphasis in life on clothing and use of creams or some other substances like that, because they would think that this is something related to female, because their mother would give them an example, whatever that mother is. But so sometimes, let's say, lack of parental figure or something will also trigger other experiences, and all of these experiences will lead to interpretation of one's sexuality. So first of all, how one perceives life, and also what kind of partners we attract, because the partner will be like a tool for reflection, for self-reflection, speaking in spiritual terms. And in general, we learn through reflection usually, rather than directly. I mean, in order to learn directly, one needs to advance to that level to be able to reflect oneself without having an external mirror or trigger. But most of the people learn through interactions, and the purpose of relationships is usually, speaking in spiritual and evolutionary terms, is to reflect oneself and to see all these hidden sides, hidden aspects of selves which we weren't aware of previously. And once you are able to work with yourself, you will be more prone to go back again to your childhood experience and see what is, first of all, your mother and father, what do they represent for you, and then observing and perceiving that feeling within, like feeling it actually in your body, having certain internal reactions, you will be understand, let's say, why you perceive the world. And the world means everything, how you relate to matter, how you relate to everything that includes the world, with living and non-living beings. So your attitude to everything that happens to you, your reactions will be defined by all this, which I've mentioned earlier. It means that in general, the idea of I am responsible for myself and the world, and I am a victim of myself, though, will derive from these interpretations of parental archetypes within oneself. And these interpretations are usually very unconscious. There's just an inner story. And so, so this will define, and, feminine and masculine usually are also, these sort of feminine and masculine archetypes generally are given and defined for us by our society. So there is the parental level, and then there is a social level. So social level is what society defines as gender. And so many times we have confusion because we have certain understanding through movies, through some social media and so on, what the male and female have to be, or how they have to appear, and changes with time. But the sense of self and the sense of the world, is the world supporting me, or I'm antagonizing? Am I trying to escape from the world? So all of these tendencies, escapism, antagonism, rebellion, attitude, and so on, they come from some dysfunctional form of relationship with parents, because after all, the world is just within ourselves, and what actually represents the world is our body. So the body, which is either able to express it, or the consciousness in the body. So either the consciousness is able to express itself directly through the body, or if it's corrupt, it will try to find other ways, and it will affect the body as well. So if we are, let's say, we have issues with the mother, we are against the world, so a lot of our choices in life will be against our body. We will smoke, take substances, drugs, alcohol. We will neglect our body, or we will go into escapism, like escapist spirituality. We will a spirituality of denial of the body, denial of the matter. Nothing can be denied in reality, however, because everything is neutral. The world is neutral, but it is our personal interpretation. So gender will mix here with understanding of own body, and then how this body relates, let's say, to another body. And many of the sexual perversions and other kind of things, gender issues and so on, they come from dysfunctional family, from the traumatic experiences of parents and their parents. So there is an ancestral line, let's say, of certain ideas and interpretation of reality that pass on through the bloodlines as well. So it takes time for corruption to occur. And if one is struggling in a relationship, it means that, and no matter how much one is interested in spirituality, interested in this and that, this is the core, the root of spirituality, which means, am I still right now or am I not? And most of the people cannot be still. And they say, I am anxious, I'm interested in spirituality, but I'm anxious, but I'm angry, but I'm... So all of these are these hidden waves, occulted waves, which come from the childhood traumas or traumatic experiences. And these traumatic experiences, again, are only in our head because they are the interpretation of what happened in our childhood, or interpretation of our parents' role and the association of parents with ourselves. Sometimes we keep on having these deep, subtle cords or links with our parents, and if they are traumatized, if they have certain imbalanced relationships within themselves or with other people, so this will come through these mental, emotional links that we still have with them. And so on a spiritual path, it is very important to respect your origins, to respect your roots, to respect your parents, and to respect the karmic, say, circumstances that you are born at. It's like you respect your soil. You respect your soil. Imagine you're a dandelion and you come from a soil. But after all, what happens is that you are the seed. After the flower has stopped blooming, it produces this sort of a puffy, puffy thing that eventually flies all over and scatters its seeds. So it doesn't mean that the seed is going to fall into the same soil, but it goes further and lives further. Many times parents feel insecure and they do everything possible to create strong dependence on them. By this, they control, manipulate their children because their children give them a sense of life. So all of this dysfunctional relationship create obviously ripples in their children's life and create issues in children's life. Children are not able to either stabilize themselves financially or find the right route in life, in the world, in the body, or they are unhealthy because this is propelled by parents. And there are almost every family like that, having one or two cases like that. At the moment, the essential thing is to teach parents to be parents. Because if we understand the essence of parenting, we would not create further issues or corruption in the future. But unfortunately, most of the people are extremely corrupt at the moment. So what can they pass on as parents? Before, the idea was to pass on knowledge, to pass on wisdom, to pass on ideas of how to live in the world. At the moment, everyone is confused. No one knows what they want personally, and everything happens randomly, unexpectedly, by chance. So what comes to children as well. So there is no actual foundation on which the family would prosper. If the family doesn't prosper, and if there is no balance and harmonious communication between first basic archetypes of the world, of the existence for our body, let's say, for our embodied consciousness, then how can we have proper relationship or relation to the world if our understanding of the world through our parents is already corrupt from the beginning. So when we want to break through, the first step on a spiritual journey would be to address these issues before you actually go into any kind of knowledge accumulation techniques, because all that is futile and useless as long as there is no foundation. And the foundation is deep contentment. As long as you have issues with your parents and these links and the spiritual subtle ways for them to affect you or for you to be triggered, you will have turbulent relationships. You will have turbulent situations with other people, which will destabilize you and will make you uneligible for actual true spirituality, because spirituality is born out of stillness. If one is not able to feel content and still, it means one doesn't have the proper foundation. Whatever you do before that is not spiritual. It's just a part of your life. It's just it is a part of your journey anyways, of course, so everything is kind of spiritual, but it is not the actual spiritual path of acquiring knowledge, of awakening from within. Because if you prematurely awake, but you have not resolved these issues, these are unrefined aspects within, and you're citing to this or citing to that, you cannot perceive life and the world in a neutral way, in an equanimous way, it means there is no foundation and you will be just dragged into all kinds of directions. So when the spiritual awakening happens, you have to have only one direction towards selflessness, simplicity, and purity. If anything else is there, it's of a distorted nature, corrupt nature, and you will need to let it go and refine. It means that you will need to spend time if you haven't done so previously. So you cannot separate this into, this is a part of psychology or psychiatry, and now I am pursuing spirituality. There's no spirituality without life. There's no spirituality without understanding the integrated context of bioenergetic or biospiritual entity as myself. And so the relation of this with the rest of the world. So that's where archetypes are the clues or the keys for you to detangle your corruption and to come to the streamline where you actually base yourself on a foundation of stillness, which is a result of detanglement of those issues. Because if you still feel underlying anxiety, if there is you cannot understand the roots of your emotions and thoughts which arise there within your mind, it means you still don't know a lot about yourself. And it means that you have to do that work first before you actually come to the point where you are eligible for spiritual knowledge, which is stillness and selflessness. One will always be either selfish, self-centered, narcissistic, victimized, as long as these issues with the world, and the world is represented by our parents and our interpretation also of the world. So as long as these issues and these, yarn is not detangled, it is futile to really speak about any true spirituality, I would say. I would like also to say that a lot of occult phenomena, which people interpret as occult, comes from parents, ancestral lines, of mother and father. And all of these are nothing but certain living clusters of thoughts and emotions that people simply propel through their own bodies. So in this case, let's say people are, they may many times perceive that, there is some kind of an occult cloud, witchcraft and all. But how one gets into this is defined by, again, parental relationships. The way we interpreted parents, the way we related to our parents in early childhood, and whatever circumstances there were to shape our perspective on the world. So many times when you are in this spiritual warfare, like many people say, and you fight with external, as you think, circumstances and bad luck, and so like other issues with, and or you suspect that there is some kind of an occult influence in your life, all the answers can be found again through contemplating on the relationships with parents, on the perception of parents, on understanding psychological links, which psycho-emotional links that we've created with our parents from the childhood. And it's a lot of work. And many people say that even though they try to go to psychiatrists and psychologists and try to look for help, psychiatrists and psychologists in the modern context are not capable to fully detangle it because they have no psychospiritual knowledge. And so their knowledge is very limited and to a certain degree only. And so many times I receive these feedbacks that people went for years to different kind of counselings, and it was in vain because no one was able to link these things together. Now, what comes to psychospiritual therapy, that takes place first when people are getting in touch and they want to get on the spiritual path, right? So the emphasis here is to really detangle this main yarn, or main knot that has been there in their lives, and it becomes an obstacle for their financial prosperity and abundance, an obstacle for their balanced relationship with people. And many times these people who have difficulties with parents, narcissistic parents, parents who have a lot of control and manipulated them for years, for a lifetime sometimes. So all of these things affect their finances, make them struggle in life, make them feel like the whole world is against them, like they are too weak to pursue something where they can succeed, or they need constant validation from either parents, or if the parents are no longer there, they would search for similar, archetypes in their further life through other people. Let's say they will choose some parental-like figure, from whom they would try to look for validation, and this will go on. So they will look for codependent relationships with people, or relationship where there is someone establishes authority. So you see a lot of these, corrupt beings who have not resolved their issues amongst, different gurus, followers, and religious, sectarian cult followers, and so on, because they need that figure. They have this desire to be led because they feel too disempowered within themselves, and there's not enough spiritual understanding within to find inner strength and to empower themselves, to understand these tendencies and currents, opposing tendencies and currents within themselves. Opposing to what? To the natural flow of life. So the world is neutral. And when we find this natural flow of life, we just flow with life and everything is given. This is the flow of abundance. This is the flow of harmony. But when we have this opposite currents and flows within, so we oppose internally, subconsciously many times, ourselves to the natural flow of the world. And so we do not understand how all of a sudden the world antagonizes with us, because we are not conscious about certain ways we express ourselves or perceive or our circumstances, or the way we relate to the world internally, because sometimes people are not expressing what they think of others and the world, but others and the world doesn't want to deal with them or antagonizes with them to some degree. It's because there is judgment. There is still a seed, a very strong seed of victimization, which is expressed as an emanation, because you shouldn't forget that you're not just a body or some kind of a mind. You are a very sophisticated biospiritual being, entity, which emanates self through the body and through other layers of consciousness, which are sattva, those layers that emanate thoughts and emotions. But sometimes you are, let's say, you don't express your negativity, but it is emanating, so people will react without understanding why they don't like you or why they perceive you in a negative light. So all of these things have to be understood prior to really going into any kind of other forms of spiritual learning or acquiring knowledge. And when we say, I would like to spiritually learn, I would like to free myself from this influence, that influence, from occult influences, we need to understand in very simple terms what these all mean before we really go into that. Because in order to find the key or the solution to something, you need to simplify it. And the keys are your parents, your attitude to parents. And if you are able to find parallels to that attitude with the world, the parallels with the world, now the attitude to your partners, to your children, to your colleagues, to your friends, so you will see also relationship to money, relationship to energy in general, relationship to I am able to be responsible for myself and the world, or I'm not able to be responsible. If you feel like you're a victim of everything, but you're not able to be responsible, there is a problem. And there will be struggles and problems with your finances and with your ability to create a proper foundation for your living, and kind of, you will not be rooted in contentment on certain levels anyways. And also there could be underlining anxiety and constant worry about losses or potential losses. So these opposite currents will always work through your mind. How? And you would say, oh, this must be an occult influence. Yes, but it finds the connection within you. So how it's going to work? It's going to work through suggestions. So you will have these opposing thoughts. For example, the moment you want to go and succeed, you want to go and do something, you want to become entrepreneurial, you want to start your business, you will have this very strong feelings of fear, I am weak, I'm disempowered, doubting yourself, and so on. And so you will think, oh, someone doesn't want me to be successful. And so again, the victimized perspective will predominate, and you will obviously blame everyone else instead of really observing that everything is within you. So it's very important to understand the spiritual perspective on that, which is kind of neutral and understands that both currents are within. The both currents, one is natural and one is unnatural. Unnatural is the one that pushes you towards the world and drains you through the pursuits which are transitory and impermanent. And the other, which nourishes you and which cultivates your own strength and empowers you from within, despite your relationships with the matter, with the external matter. So if you do not understand this simply, if you do not see through the contemplation on your parents and archetypes and relationship how it's all working through you, you will not be able to progress anyhow. This all will be just a pseudo desire based again on some kind of a insecurity within, low self-confidence, where you just found another stream, but which is again external, to define and validate yourself, like spiritual narcissism is all new age spiritual learning and kind of pseudo acquiring some kind of spiritual status. In true spirituality, there are no tags and no statuses. It's all within. You either conquer yourself that self which is limited and corrupt, and you understand simplicity and selflessness, and you simply dissolve and let go of all that rubbish within, or you accumulate along this path more and more rubbish, draining and tending, like having tendency to go outwards and propel all that, all those weaknesses which are dragging you around in the name of spirituality or spiritual knowledge acquiring and so on. So true knowledge is the one that helps you to let go of all that which is not supporting the natural flow and the natural being. All the rest is just transitory. If you pursue and explain or excuse a life with whatever pursuits, but these pursuits are external and are a part of that external current towards the world, you're doomed and you will perish like everyone else, whether you are having a status of a guru, a teacher, a healer, a president, a king. If you do not understand how to cultivate stillness and selflessness, you're doomed and will perish and lose this body, because this body will be drained by all these external currents that fool you around and give you a false purpose. Now, if you found the true current, which is the natural flow, which is selfless and which cannot be put in words, because it's something that cultivates your inner being without draining you outwards. So it doesn't mean that you don't live in the world, you do, but you support this world, and this world is your body, first of all. If you still see the world outside your body and emphasize it or focus on it, you're draining yourself. If you cultivate your stillness and you cultivate the natural flow within, and you go along that natural flow within, you will not want to define yourself. You will not want to spiritually or in any way to become anything in this world. You will just do what is right for you at this particular moment. And so all these ideas of what's my life purpose and this cannot be understood without self-refinement, without understanding and detangling what brought you into corrupt state. And the first step is to go back to contemplating on female male archetypes, or the world archetypes that were represented by our parents. There's no other way. And all the rest come along with it. All the occult influences, all the understanding of subtle currents, all will come along with that. Provided, of course, you have clear understanding on what you are to do. And this doing is not the actual doing in the body. It's more on a contemplative level, on the level of self-observation. And so through life, through, again, clashing with the world, clashing with other people, reflecting yourself through other people, you will get more and more clues about subtler and subtler aspects which pull you again outwards and cause your spiritual and energetic draining, which of course causes decay and death eventually. I would say also that many times we come close to our understanding of the world and our masculine and feminine archetypes, or our being within, through dreams. And many times the occult influences us through dreams. What is the occult? The occult means hidden. That aspect, that opposite current to the natural being. So it influences us through dreams. Many times we suppress certain things and we experience them in dreams. And that's why dreams, for some, become very important part of their spiritual detangling process, where you try to understand your weaknesses through dreams. Because if you're very well established in yourself, you will be having the same conscious understanding and awareness in a dream as much as you have it in an awakened state. So, but when there is something which is so-called occult or hidden, it will always manifest itself through dreams, especially if, let's say, you're not able to observe these subtle tendencies and waves that arise within you during an awakened state and while you are interacting with other people. So, and as we know, everything is in this world of a nature of resonance and kind of like certain waves, certain transmissions. So we perceive everything as an emanation on a subtle level. And so all these have to be understood. You have to perceive yourself not just like as a lump of physical being, but as a constantly transmitting being, which transmits itself into the body, but through other also. It doesn't only transmit into the body directly, because at the moment it has this prism, the distortive transmission, which is the transmission of constant thoughts and emotions that are kind of hooks through which one tangles with the neutral world or with the matter. So these tendencies are these currents or hooks. And let's say if someone wishes, other people also transmit that. So if someone wishes you something negative, they might not say, they might not express it through the body, and you will not be able to see it, but you will perceive it as an emanation because it just radiates. So this radiation is the transmission of one's being. Normally, let's say if you are free, or you resolved all the gross emotional distortions, you will simply transmit the being, the equanimous being, which will be interpreted maybe by other people as love and bliss and godliness and whatever not. But it's just a natural being. Now, for the majority of people, what they transmit this imbalanced, corrupt state, which is propelled by these internal disruptive currents, which are like a bubble of constant, movement of thoughts, invoking emotions, invoking feelings. So there is this prism. It means that the subtle being is unrefined, and it propels or pushes one's consciousness continuously outwards. If we do not realize that, we just become a victim again of these external currents that drain us and drag us outwards. And because they drain us outwards, we lose our vitality. We cannot be still because our mind is too much engaged with the world and becomes either worrisome, anxious, agitated, frustrated, reactive, and obviously one's will is weakened. If one's will is weakened, one becomes simply an energetic food to subtle entities or clusters of thoughts and emotions. So it is a science. It is a science that I'm not going to talk about right now, but it's a science. So in spirituality, it's like this. Either one becomes one's own autonomous being and then chooses how one lives through the body. One has a protective shield and lives through the natural current, or one goes into the unnatural current, which is outwards into the world and becomes a part of the world. And to be a part of the world means to be within a food chain. And this food chain is not just physical, it's first of all energetic. So one becomes exposed to all kinds of parasitic energies and currents. These parasitic energies and currents are those which drain our vitality and shorten our life. So that's why Siddhas and different other spiritually accomplished, refined beings focus so much on vitality, because they understood this principle. So the natural world is neutral, but the natural world has its own laws, and the natural world exists on a subtle energetic level and also on a physical level. So on the physical level, let's say if a human body is not necessarily in a food chain as we might think, because we don't have, let's say, a threat every day from another animal to be eaten, we actually are eaten by microbes, viruses, bacteria continuously, and by parasites. So this is the point which we do not understand. So our immunity is constantly undermined on the physical level, but more so on an energetic level, because on an energetic level, we are drained by these parasitic currents, which continuously take us away from the natural flow within ourselves into the copulation with the matter. And spiritually speaking, to be renunciate, or to be a person who really renounces the world, means to dwell in your natural being, dwell in stillness, and pursue the natural flow rather than the flow which drains you and eats you from inside. How it eats you from inside? Because all these parasitic energies are picked from outside and connected from inside outwards. And so they are propelled. There are links which again drain, through which one's being, one's vitality is drained. So if we do not understand this principle, there is no spiritual evolution for anyone. You're just playing a game where you are just a physical body, and you see your spirituality from the physical or very limited logical mental perspective. But the subtle being, the subtle living has to be also understood. And so if you just pursue some kind of healthy diets, you pursue healthy lifestyle, spiritual lifestyle, all that is futile, because that you do not have an organic, complete understanding of what you're doing, why you're doing, and why you are pursuing this. Because there is no complete knowledge on the subject of what I am. Still, there is only emphasis on I am the body, and I am some kind of a mind. And even if you work with separate thoughts and emotions, there is no complete understanding why. If you add certain diet, or you try to fast, or you do not understand why. And so when there is no deeper understanding why certain things have to be, or certain practices have to be incorporated with the subtle work, there is no actual learning. The learning is very wobbly and very painful, and that's why we call this learning as suffering, because you just bump here and there and you kind of try to learn, but you still don't have the complete picture. So acquiring different separate pieces of knowledge, or spiritual knowledge, or whatever, occult knowledge, will not lead you to a wholesome understanding, as long as there's still projection outwards, and as long as these currents outwards are not understood.